goodness. So, welcome, ladies, gentlemen, everyone, our dear followers. We are back online. It is, my goodness, the 30th of August, and we are at 12:20 Central European time. So, if you look at our icon, I think Karl was having a great time on the beach, and we're kind of having to do the heavy work for him. And we want to go forward with this whole issue, for those of you who have been following us, between Deleuze, Guattari, and their relationship to Marx, because the ultimate question is, do you think that the grandeur of Karl Marx was the last, supposedly to be the last book of Gilles Deleuze, which, as you all know, I contest very heavily, but you know, we can't just sit here and talk negatively about things. We always have to learn, and whatever we do. I think my online chat is going. I'm going to say hello, world. So if you want to send anything, we're here. And believe you me, I am very transparent. If you write anything, we can talk about it directly. No worries, no fears, etc., etc. We are not bad people. Don't worry. No problems in doing that. So what I wanted to do right now is we're going to get back to our essay on Isabelle Garot and Anne Sauvagnarne, and try and finish that up, and as they explain the relation to their opinions on the different relationships between Deleuze and Marx and Guattari and Karl Marx. So I think so far, and let's really simplify all the way, because sometimes, you know, you have to just simplify, otherwise things can get messy. So far, simplifying to the extreme. Deleuze's relationship up until his meeting with Pierre-Félix Guattari was totally peripheral. For Gilles Deleuze, Marx was just kind of seen as this Hegelian figure. And we saw that, I think, on the last appointment. I apologize, on the last appointment. Yes, indeed, under stress. For all good factors, I accidentally shut OBS Studio down. That's my fault, and I will assume no responsibility. I hope it wasn't too traumatic, but you know, we saw that Deleuze, his relationship with Althusser, a famous French Marxist, was, for Deleuze, kind of not too fruitful, but Deleuze kind of backed up Althusser because he was critical of Hegel, and therefore the interesting things that pop out of this, I don't even know if my audio is working. Let's take a look. Yes, it seems to be working. Is that it was more Althusser that made use of Deleuze than Deleuze made of Althusser. And then also, once again, I repeat, as I always say, you have to keep into consideration context. There are good people, there are bad people. Not everyone is good, and maybe some, you know, so-called legends of Marxism in the end might not be the best of people. So Deleuze's allegiance with Althusser was kind of not an important experience, but at the same time, we looked contemporarily last night into Structure et la Machine, an essay by Pierre-Félix Guattari. This is one of the things that Deleuze was very interested in, and we kind of looked at how Marx was very, very, very important to Karl Marx. So, what I hope to do, let's see if I can do this, and I repeat, for those critics that say our program, we need artificial intelligence and we need to, it's like, honestly, we're taking our precious time in the hopes that we can be useful to someone. So we might not be Mr. Beast or Logan Paul. If we had the time, we could be, but looking at the recent information regarding Mr. Beast and Logan Paul, maybe it's better. Just some simple people on YouTube that talk with all of the faults and flaws involved. So I wanted to do a simple search. I'm going to try and share my window right now. As we saw last night, we talked about the escape from structuralism. So we know that Deleuze flirted in the 1960s with structuralism, and then afterwards completely rejects structuralism. And before I share this essay, which I would put into the link, but I repeat, I'm 100% sure that you guys are much more savvy, and when you see the title, you can, pick it up and download it and read it and understand it much more better than I can. And then maybe in live chat, you can explain it to me, but live chat, the thing has disappeared. Well, hang on, that's a shame. Come on. Guys, where's the... Oh no, live chat is here, so I'm going to write something else on live chat. I'm going to write, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Go say something. I repeat, I can obviously download bots that would give me, like everyone else, like 2,000 chat views, and it'll all be fake, but who cares? So the important point is the departure here with Deleuze, who was already very critical of structuralism, and Pierre-Félix Guattari was apparently already quite departed from the structuralism. And just to understand it very quickly, and I'm giving you a very, very bad example, but I repeat, sometimes we have to go back to like the most simple terms in order to understand things. So, like I gave you already an example, Noam Chomsky believes, like many linguists, I'm not criticizing Noam Chomsky, that language is something transcendental that has always existed, and it's a question of a philosopher or a linguist has to discover all of the intricacies of language, which pre-exists everyone. So that's a structure, that's a superstructure. It's something that exists on some kind of transcendental plane, and that has to be accepted as a truth. This is obviously pure Platonic thought, and we have to accept the fact that it pre-exists us, and our role is to do our best to discover it. So let's see if I can do this right now and share this article. This is a new one. What in God's name we're sharing here? Oh, no, that's actually correct. Make it a little bit smaller so you guys can see. Up. The rise of the machines, Deleuze's flight from structuralism. So once again, I'm not gonna spend, don't know why my mouse isn't working. Yeah, I can't spend 6 hours to go over this. Download it. I will put it in the description, but this is all you need to know. So in this paper, I offer an account of the conceptual shift that occurs between the work completed by Gilles Deleuze prior to 1969 and his later work with Félix Guattari beginning in 1972 with l'Anti-Oedipe. So, important point is this huge shift with Gilles Deleuze, which will bring him much closer to Marx, because Guattari was convinced Marxist and an activist. So this is what we've been saying for the last few days, nothing new here, against previous interpretations which have concentrated on the developments initiated by Deleuze. I argue for the primary importance of Guattari's influence, and once again here I would agree 100%. The primary importance of Guattari's influence, especially his insistence on a theory of machinic processes. The importance of these processes is made manifest in Deleuze and Guattari's move away from theories of structuralism. In order to carry out this task, I offer a close reading of Guattari's essay Machine and Structure, which we looked at last time. Once again, my apologies that I kind of hacked one podcast into two separate pieces. This essay was first written as a review of Deleuze's acclaimed work in Difference and Repetition and Logic of Sense, and formed the basis for Deleuze and Guattari's first meeting. So, like we saw the last podcast, I introduced you very superficially because it's a long essay. I cannot do podcasts for 10 hours. I would. I have no problem, but it's going to get boring. You will download it. You will learn it, and that's what's important. So, what we need to know. Félix Guattari has already written Machine and Structure, and as I have maintained before, even if you dig up, no one will have the patience, but some of our podcasts from last year, Félix Guattari is how would I say it? He's quite serious. I mean, he's not a madman. I mean, he is doing, for me, reading Guattari is extreme by himself. Is extremely complicated. But for Gilles Deleuze, he famously said that Guattari was the diamond miner. So, that was the guy going down, risking everything and trying to dig out new concepts and new stuff. Deleuze said he would refine the diamonds that Guattari would bring back from his adventures in the mines. And not surprising for me. So Machine and Structure, which we looked at a little bit about last time, about machines, machinic processes, technical machines in the Marxian sense, machines which, for industry, machines for construction, but also machines at the same time for the subconscious, machines for desire. We all know the desiring machines, les machines désirantes, etc., etc. So, this was written by Guattari as a review of Deleuze's difference in repetition and logic of sense. So obviously Gilles Deleuze is very, very interested in what Guattari had to write, and they met, and according to this essay, in the concluding sections of the paper, I show how the integration of the concept of the machine concept, because like we said last time, Guattari was creating a new concept of the machine, allows Deleuze and Guattari to develop a theory of the unconscious that operates outside of the boundaries traditionally set by structuralist analysis. So I'm going to go really quickly through this, and I'm only going to highlight the references to Marx, because we don't have enough time, and here we want to understand essentially that for Pierre-Félix Guattari, Marx was kind of fundamental. For Deleuze, not so much. And as we stated yesterday, you have to distinguish between Deleuze, his writings, and Deleuze and Guattari, because we know that Deleuze would co-author books in order to annihilate his own self. So if Deleuze wrote a book, which he did with Claire Parnet, Deleuze would not consider that as being him. And that's something, a product of two people, and not unique neither to the one nor the other. So, and there's many cases of this with Deleuze, and obviously with Pierre-Félix Guattari, you will have, as we mentioned, this whole issue of who is doing what here, no? I'll give you an example. The naysayers will say, yeah, well, Deleuze was Marxian, and his last book will be The Grandeur of Marx, which I contest 100%. In the 1980s, Gilles Deleuze wrote a bunch of books about cinema, and that was his writings, no? I think The Logic of Sensation, the book about Francis Bacon, that was he was writing alone as Gilles Deleuze, In other points, he was Deleuze and Guattari, Deleuze and Claire Parnet, and there will be other examples, but if you are familiar with the cinema books by Deleuze, I think one would recognize that Pierre-Félix Guattari is not there. And there's no reference to Karl Marx, and there's just a completely different tone, and how can I say, just a different conceptual method. So, we know for sure that Deleuze wrote 3 books, at least 2, I believe 3, maybe I'm wrong. No, the Cinema 1 et Cinema 2, 2 books, let's say 2 books on cinema, but that is Gilles Deleuze as Gilles Deleuze. It's not Gilles Deleuze and Pierre-Félix Guattari together, So there's a huge difference between that. And Marx, I think, is a perfectly, maybe the quintessential example of the difference between Deleuze on his own as a philosopher and Deleuze and Guattari, who are D&G, Dolce & Gabbana, just joking, but they are something different, no? They're two people that created something together, so therefore it's a collaboration, a true collaboration, and it's very different. And you can go and analyze, and Deleuze has always said this. He's always said that, I never saw things the same way as Pierre Félix, but, he was my friend, so therefore, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not like Guattari was a moron. Guattari was a genius, in my opinion. But they're completely, for me, two separate things. Deleuze by himself and Guattari by himself, and I will still maintain, let's go ahead, that Marx was always peripheral. Deleuze had no great interest in Karl Marx. So we're going to go into this text, and what I'm going to do is I am highlighting the passages on Karl Marx. So, oh my goodness. Let's go to number 1. No shit. We read a bit of this. Despite his Lacanian training, by 1969, Guattari had begun the long process of dismantling the formalism and logic of his mentor's system. Finding Lacanian psychoanalysis insufficient for his clinical work with psychosis, Guattari became one of the central voices in the development of institutional analysis, a psychotherapeutic practice that aimed to go beyond Lacan by working with the historical and social-political nature of desire. The two central doctrines of Lacanian theory that Guattari was most intent to overturn were the importance placed on Oedipal triangulation, which is once again just in terms of the anti-Oedipa and Guattari. It's interesting to read that he was against that theory of Oedipal triangulation, which was kind of a central theme in l'anti-Oedipe. And the reductiveness in this thesis on the signifier. Much more easy to follow, both of which he saw as capturing desire within the historically contingent form of the nuclear family. So once again, according to Pierre-Félix Guattari, the nuclear family, mom, dad, and me, is historically contingent. To put it bluntly, Pierre-Félix Guattari wanted to open psychoanalysis onto history, and especially onto a Marxist account of history, by attacking the tendency within psychoanalysis towards linguistic structuralism. So, if we are still at the point where we can subsume the points we've done so far, we still know at this point Deleuze, his interest in Marx is peripheral. Deleuze is interested in philosophy and metaphysics. Pierre-Félix Guattari is much more practical. He is subscribed to the Communist Party, and he is a militant Marxist. And Guattari's huge critique is against linguistic structuralism, which we saw before. I gave you this very simple example of Noam Chomsky, but this idea that language and meaning is transcendental. It's always been there, no? Just like Plato. Tree, T-R-E-E. You can change it to another language, it doesn't matter, because the letters will change, but the signifier, the letters, and the signifier, the tree, will always be the same. So, changing languages doesn't really matter. What Guattari found when he read both difference and repetition and logic of sense was a highly original rendering of the concept of structure that he could use for his own purposes. I need a bottle of water, my apologies. Pepper. My apologies, that's my assistant. Look, Megan. That's my assistant. She is a very young English bulldog, but she has the best intentions. So, what Guattari found when he read both difference and repetition and logic of sense was a highly original rendering of the concept of structure. In Machine and Structure, Guattari is keen to tease out a distinction that he finds undeveloped in Deleuze's work between the productive force that animates historical change and the resulting structure given at any particular moment in history. So here things get crazy complicated, but let's go ahead. Guattari names the productive force the machine. So, oh shit, I never thought we would get to even to talk about this. For me, it's pretty complicated, but let's say that following Bergson, Deleuze already has the concept of the virtual, and the virtual is obviously the underlying forces which will eventually lead to the event, or it's the invisible, metaphysical things that we can't see, which have obviously determined the real and the real world, but not in very obvious or clear ways. So Deleuze was already onto that, and what we have here is that incredibly Guattari, he finds this underdeveloped in Deleuze's work between the productive force that animates historical change and the resulting structure given at any particular moment in history. Let's go ahead a little bit. This is curious. Guattari names the productive force the machine and opposes it to the contingent structural articulations to which it gives rise. So once again, all of this stuff is very, very, very complicated, but and I repeat, the purpose of this podcast is not to be Logan Paul and cool and make money, monetize. I would love to have Logan Paul's hair, but check this out. We're not there. But the productive force, I think, if we have to be simple, in the beginning, because we have to break things down, that would be the virtual for Deleuze. I will always give you, be repetitive, the famous example by Deleuze is that when there's a storm, when you see lightning and thunder, that is the real consequence of virtual underlying invisible forces. And then, you could say, are we talking about magic or what? No. I think Masumi, others have given good definitions. When you have a knot of air pressure, which is very low, and that's natural. When you have, a knot of, or a node of cold air, or a front, a weather front, maybe you have a line here, cold weather. Here, it's all warm. You have clouds which are saturated behind unsaturated clouds, air pressure drop, and then these are kind of things, abstract things, virtual things. Let's be really simple, and then just understand, and then you go on. But those are things we cannot see, but they are the hidden, invisible forces that, in this case, would cause a lightning storm. So the electricity will be due to, pressure drops and nodes, and which would theoretically be called singularities. And what we see, which we live, is real. This is the whole point. Has behind it productive forces, as Guattari would say. So already I think we can understand that there's a good basis for the relationship between Deleuze and Guattari. So just to speed up here, what I want to do is take this article. This article is on Pierre Guattari. I'm going to search and show every time, just to speed up here, how much Marx is in this article. So this historicist conception of the machine makes sense in the context of Guattari's Marxist theoretical background, with Guattari's concept of the machine standing in for the Marxist concept of the base of productive economic relations, while his theory of the structure plays the equivalent role of the legal and cultural superstructure. For Marx, while the legal, social, and cultural implications of any political economy may form a structural whole, they are all determined by the historical and material development of technology. Once again, we do not want to go into all the details. We just want to explain to you that Guattari and Marx, that Guattari was essentially a very highly original person, a highly original psychoanalyst, a highly original writer, and as fundamentally a Marxist. But like I said last time, he's correctly trying to recreate the outdated concepts of Marxism for something more relevant to his time. So he's not a Marxist in the dogmatic sense. He is correctly, in my opinion, a Marxist who is trying to push Marx forward and create new ideas, new concepts, and kind of making Marx relevant to the contemporary world in the 70s, 80s, etc. So here we have Anne Sonia. He sums up the interrelation between Guattari's Marxist reading of history and his anti-structural project when she writes, and once again, the whole point of this podcast is not to get into all these details, but at the same time, as we read, for example, Guattari has a Marxist reading of history. However, at the same time, he challenges the structuralism of Marxism. So, very, very interesting themes. And maybe I could even say, for example, and I don't want to be mean, and this is, my God, 1 a.m., it's cigarette time now. Instead of these so-called Deleuzian scholars like writing books and talking about and arguing and bitching about was the grandeur of Deleuze really his last book. I mean, I've given you the evidence. I mean, in my opinion, it's almost impossible. But who gives a fuck, That's not the point. If you're into Marx, for example, if you like the works by Deleuze and Guattari together, I mean, you have all kinds of space, and then you should, all kinds of, you can challenge it, you can try and create new concepts, you have just, you have an open highway of things that you can do if you want to be original and productive and do something new. Trust me, it's just, there's so much space, so much to do, so much work to do, because this is nascent. The other day I was talking to a French university student, and she was like, and I said to her, look, and Karl Marx was never really published until the 1970s. She was like, that's impossible. Are you out of your fucking mind? And then I explained to her the history, like on this podcast, we look into this briefly, that, nowadays everything is on your iPad, and if you want to do phenomenology, Merleau-Ponty, okay, just download the book and bing, 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 bing. But before all this magic instant communication devices, it took decades for things to seep in to intellectual discourse. So, I repeat, there's just so much. It's such a rich field, For example, I have a passion in a humble, very humble way of producing wines, So maybe I have a stupid small garden. I pick my grapes and I make like, 10 bottles a year. Half of them, will, make you puke instantly. The other half are, can or cannot be decent. But what I'm saying here is that you have this whole issue of Marx and Guattari, and up until this point, a little bit Deleuze. I mean, you just have such, if you're a Marxist, if you're a leftist, if you believe in these things, you have like an infinitely wide wine field full of red, rich volcanic earth, like in Italy, You can plant things, you can do anything. So in the end, because I always have to repeat, there's a purpose to why we're doing this, and that purpose is why I do not believe that the grandeur of Marx was Deleuze's last book. But my point is, like, why sit there and write books on that, sell books on that? Try to make your name off of that? No, fuck it. Like with Guattari and then Marx, you have in Lacan. Now we know that Slavoj Žižek opted for Hegel, because he had to be unique. He had to make more money, He had to be different. So Marx rejected. Marx. Žižek rejected Deleuze, and he didn't even very rarely mention Guattari. And just kind of explicitly attacked Deleuze, and picked up the Lacanian issue by himself with Hegel, which is kind of disastrous because the whole issue with Lacan and Marx, that should be pretty clear to you by now that this is something very, very dear to Pierre Félix Guattari. I will read now. What is more, this conception of history will become vital for Deleuze and Guattari's claim in L'Antidipe that the unconscious is neither structured like a language nor caught in the trap of the Oedipus complex. So, post-structuralism, we are no longer structuralists. Deleuze and Guattari and L'Antidipe reject the symbolic readings of interpretations of Freud, and they will go, as we cite the last podcast, much further, and they will reject, they will go to Helmslave, and then we'll get to content and expression with this whole new machinic vision. But I repeat, a lot of this is Pierre Félix Guattari, and that is not a bad thing because Pierre Félix Guattari is my personal hero. And let's just go ahead in this article here. He's a Marxist and a therapist. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Guattari wanted to open psychoanalysis onto history, and especially onto a Marxist account of history. So once again, I'm not going to be repetitive, but instead of sitting there and saying it should be obvious, it should have been obvious like a week ago, but the grandeur of Marx, there's no way that Deleuze is doing that. But at the same time, instead of wasting your time on this stupid, irrelevant question for which there's no proof for, which is a fetish because in the end, radical chic, Karl Marx, I'm Marxian, and then Gilles Deleuze's last book had to be about Marx, so I'm like left-wing radical chic by two, I'm even cooler. That's essentially, oops, I said it, that's what it's really all about. But it would be more interesting to write a book or spend your time studying in these books the Marxist, the relationship between Deleuze and Guattari, Marxism, and for example, we know that Guattari proposed the concept of the machine, which is a radical, interesting rewriting of the technical machine. But at the same time, Pierre Félix Guattari has a fundamental Marxist account of history. What does that mean? Right now, I guess we'll take a look at that in the next appointment, but the next podcast, which may or may not be tomorrow, Friday, the 31st of August, and but in the end, if there was any point in this whole adventure, we did. Let me clear these windows out. I'm gonna even risk taking this off. Oh my God. Yeah, this kind of zigzag adventure we took, if there's any point in it, in my opinion, first, is that no way in hell that Deleuze's last book would be dedicated to Guattari, and I think we've proven ample evidence that is not the case. However, at the same time, people that want to believe, no problem. It doesn't change. For me, it doesn't matter. And two, the point is that Guattari, Pierre Félix Guattari, has a very, very, very strict relationship with Karl Marx. At the same time, we know that Guattari was kind of a madman, extremely creative. So obviously he got to work on subsuming ideas and concepts from Marx and creating his own. We know that he did this alone before meeting Gilles Deleuze. The whole machinic machine is something which belongs at the beginning exclusively to Pierre Félix Guattari. And so in the end, we're just touching on, I think in this podcast, we're just always, if we're successful, maybe we can touch upon something like an iceberg that's going to take the Titanic down, no? So, my question would be this: if Pierre Félix Guattari was so important in those works they did together, and his relationship to Lacan and to Marx was fundamental. Deleuze did have a relationship as well with Lacan, which we can get into, but I'm not going to say peripheral, but it was quite different in nature, because Pierre Félix Guattari he was a student and was to be the heir, the prince of Lacan when Lacan passed away. And they argued, and Guattari did his own thing, but yes, Deleuze does have some relationship to Guattari, to Lacan, and we can look into that, but a lot of these issues that we're going to see with Freud in l'Antidipe, with Lacan, with the machinic capitalism. I think if we push further, and I know a lot of people, all our Deleuzian orthodox in their pajamas, etc., their Deleuze pajamas and pillows, who sleep great at night. They don't have nightmares like we do, who actually think about things. We're going to find that Pierre Félix Guattari had I won't say dominant, but a very, very, very important role in l'Anti-Oedipe, in Mille Plateaux, and in Qu'est-ce que c'est la philosophie. So, based on my experience, I would say that Guattari's role has always been heavily, very heavily underestimated in those books And I repeat, instead of wasting time on saying like Deleuze's last book was on Marx, which for me remains rubbish, you go dig into Marx and Guattari. Guattari's Marxian historicism. You got so much to look into, so much stuff. Like I said, it's just a rich, huge field to be cultivated. So many things. So, if you're into Marx, don't go there and dork around and sell books and argue with people like our comments, like, oh yeah, well today people sustain that Deleuze, was not Marxian. Who gives a fuck? You study the subject matter, you decide. We've given our I wouldn't dare say facts, but our point of view, the best as possible. And I repeat, it's nothing against Marx. We love Karl Marx. If you look at our icon, Karl should be drinking a Budweiser on the beach with two pretty hot girls. His bathing suit absolutely rocks, and we're all for Karl Marx. We think he should rest, do some R&R, because he's been abused like everyone else up here, there, everywhere. But it's a strange argument. But I'm saying, it doesn't matter, like, the grandeur of Deleuze. Was it Deleuze's last book? No. Go look into Guattari. He's the Marxian. He's 100% Marxian. He's a militant. Deleuze was never a militant, never very interested in Marx. So it's obvious who is dominant in the relationship when they write together, at least as far as Marx goes, and also, we will dare say, at least to this idea of the machine and the machinic. But it shouldn't be a shock, because if you look at Deleuze's books up through from Bergson to Nietzsche to the Logic of Sense, everything he wrote beforehand is radically different from those three books, no? But those three books, L'Antidipe, Mieux Platon, Qu'est-ce que c'est la philosophie? It's the product of two people. So once again, I'm not going to go on any further. I know that those few followers understand this much better than I do. I'm going to do my last chance to write me live. What can I say to the world? Have a lovely evening. Got it. And that's my last thing on live chat. As always, a pleasure, and we will hopefully get out of this issue as quickly as possible, a day or two. And as always, thank you for those who follow us. It's a pleasure, and see you next time for sure. Thanks again. Take care. Be well. Until next time.